Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Signature Lux fog lights, direct replacement for a Ford Ranger Raptor. Australia has had this Ranger Raptor or versions of the Ranger Raptor for 2 generations now. So for like the last 3 or 4 years, they've had it. Signature Lux has been making equipment for them almost that entire time. So they've been around, they've worked on these trucks for a while. So when I got mine, I wanted some upgraded fog lights. I called them and asked them if they would fit in the US version, and they said they're not sure, but what they would do is they would send me the lights with all the different versions of their brackets if I would figure out if they fit or what needs to happen to make them fit. And then they said they just send them to me to give them the right dimensions and make their own. I didn't have to make a video or anything, just get on the phone with them or get on a voice chat with them and talk to them about what issues I had and what I had to do to make it fit. So what I did with the first set of brackets is I actually took the plate that this mounts in the bumper out. It's just 4 bolts, took the whole plate out, figured out what I had to file off the bracket and file off the mounts to make it work. And I got it to work pretty easily. It was not a ton of trimming. It's just little pieces of plastic. When I told them about that, they said, that's not the solution we're looking for. So what I did is went out and bought a piece of 1/16 inch aluminum and made my own little mounts that fit in the factory mounting plate without doing any modifications at all. Sent them the dimensions of that and a lot of pictures, and then what they did is they built this new bracket that's going to fit directly. So really, there's no trimming required. You don't even have to take that mounting plate out of your truck to install it. You can do it all in the truck. I'm going to do it both ways just to show you, but I prefer taking the whole mounting plate out because then you're working at your table and you can spend some more time zip tying this huge wiring harness all together, get it mounted to the plate before you put everything back in there. The reason this wiring harness is so massive is because they actually integrated high beam, low beams into the wiring harness. So your fog lights are not tied in to go high beam, low beam based on your truck's high beams. Actually, when you turn your truck's high beams on, fog lights, it kills power to them in the North American versions. I don't know about the other ones. So what they do is they make it where when you have your headlights on, your high beams off, and your fog lights on, if you turn your fog lights off and back on again, they go into high beam mode. Doesn't make them brighter or dimmer. It makes it so that the low beams have a straight line across and then it lights everything below it. High beams put the whole circle of light out. So basically you can turn that on and off just by turning the light off and back on. So when you're driving around on regular city streets and you want your fog lights on, you can have them in low beams. They're not going to blind anybody. When you're out on the trails or just out on a road that you don't have people coming at you, you can put these in high beam mode and it'll light up and down, not just down, which, I mean, if you're on a trail, that makes sense, but if you're on a road, you don't really need to do that. And then if you turn your high beams on, it's going to trick these off anyway. I haven't messed with Forescan to see if there's a way to avoid that where you can have all the lights on at the same time, but I don't really care too much about it. I've also got my off-road lights, so I can just turn those on if I want a ton of light. So this video is going to be installing that. One of the things I thought was awesome from these guys is they didn't just send me these brackets, they sent me some other cool stuff they make as well, just to mess with. And again, they didn't say, hey, make a video about this, try to sell it. They just said, hey, thanks for your help. Here's a bunch of cool stuff. So they sent me these pedal covers. They're actually made of aluminum, brushed aluminum. It's got some rubber on it. So I'm going to put these on. If you've watched any of my previous videos or some of my previous videos, I've talked about the biggest gripe I have about this truck is the audio system Bluetooth connection for CarPlay, or actually it uses Wi-Fi for CarPlay. But it always syncs my phone up, but I'd say half the time the audio doesn't sync through. I can control the phone from my tablet, I can control the tablet from my phone, but audio is not passing. I have to disconnect and reconnect. It'll show that it's playing, but no audio. Once I disconnect, reconnect, audio starts working again. I've gotten used to it. It's become like standard operating procedure to do that. But they sent me this device that plugs in hardwired into your truck to give you the CarPlay. You can watch really anything on this. It takes over your screen and makes it like a TV screen. So shouldn't use it while you're driving, but when I'm waiting for my kids, I can watch YouTube, stuff like that. Whole different video on that, but this has fixed it. I've had this in my truck now for over a week, and at no point have I ever had audio not come through. So this fixed that problem for me. I love it. If I had known this was a thing, I would have bought it a while ago, but I've had one of these in the past, like 3 years ago, in a car that did not have wireless CarPlay, and there was a massive lag between the video on the phone and, just there was a big lag between what was on the phone and what was coming through. This has no lag, and that's important when you're driving around a city you're not used to, and you have Google Maps or Waze or whatever playing through your phone, and it's like a second or two delayed. The streets aren't showing up at the same speed. This is instantaneous, just like CarPlay on your truck is as you get it, but this avoids the audio issues. So I'm gonna do a whole other video on that. And then they also sent me these cool 3D Raptor emblems that go on the side on the tub of your truck. So I'm gonna install those too, but I wanted to get your idea. So at the end of the video, I'm gonna show you what they look like. And I'm curious if I should take the original graphics off or just put these right on top of it. So that's it. I'm gonna get in here on the passenger side. I'm gonna do it just by taking the cover off and taking the light out of the housing, putting the new light in, and doing all the wiring up in there. You'll see how much of a pain it is, tight quarters and everything, getting everything tucked in there. And then on the driver's side, I'm gonna take the whole mounting plate out and do it all here. So let's just get to it. All right, so the first thing you wanna do, turn your wheel to the opposite side of the side you're working on. So I am on the passenger side in the US, the right side. So I turn the wheels all the way to the left so that I have access to this, because this is the cover we're going to be taking off. There are a total of 3 screws. There's a T27 here, a T27 here, and then a 10mm down inside of here. A T25 will work. These aren't super tight, but if you have a T27, just use that. That's the right size for this, and then you won't possibly strip it out. All right, once those 3 screws are out, it's held in by this little piece of felt here and then a little lip over here. So you kind of pull it over, get this little felt out of the way, and then it just comes right out. It's got this little pad thing here. It goes on the side of a little vent here. I'll show you from the front after this, but really it just slides in there. Nothing here snaps, it just rests over it. And this just brings in air here, puts it out over the wheel for something. It's not like it's going to the brakes. I'm not sure what exactly this is. They probably say it's for brake cooling, but it's just hitting your tire. Here's your fog light right here. It has an adjustment, which actually goes through a screw for the front that you can't get with this on there, so I'm not really sure what the point of that is. But there are 3 screws that hold this in. There is one right here at the bottom right, one here on the top right, and then one on the left over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this one out, put the brackets on the new one, and we're only going to use the top right and then the far left to hold it in there, because this new light is so big that it can actually screw into this other one. And honestly, those 2 are more than enough. The brackets I created only had 2, and I've had them in here for like 4,000 miles over the last month and a half, and they've been working great. They haven't moved a single time. So that's what it is. So to unplug it, there's a tab on the top on the little plug. You just push it in, pull the plug out. This is what we're going to plug into the wiring harness. The screws that hold this in are T25. And this is part of why I like to just take the whole thing out, because it makes it a lot easier. This felt liner makes it difficult to get the screwdriver on, unless you had a shorter screwdriver, but I don't have short Torx head screwdrivers. Okay, so the original fog light is out. Let's compare these 2. All right, so here's your 2 different fog lights. This is the Ford one. You can see this is a big plastic piece, and the actual lens in there that shapes the light is behind there. It's kind of a weird shape because it just puts a line of light out, which I guess is pretty cool. But if you look inside of here, you can see how big that LED diode is. And it's really small in the factory one. So, I mean, it's also got a way bigger heat sink, just a more substantial light altogether. It does get warmer, but man, it puts out a lot of light. So anyway, I got to take these brackets off, put the new ones they sent me on, and then we'll reinstall it in there, and we'll figure out how to zip tie this whole wiring harness together somewhere up in there to keep it out of the way. So I'm taking the mounts that I had on here, holding it in, off now. And the reason these mounts fit is because I modified the actual plate that it was screwed into. So these mounts are obviously left and right, so you got to make sure you put the right one on the correct side. And then you've got to use the front hole to line it up so it's the right depth once you get it in there. They send you black screws and silver screws. The black screws are actually too long. They bottom out in the threads before they actually tighten on the fastener. So I'm using the silver screws. And this is another reason to take the actual mounting thing out of there so you can actually work on this. I feel like I'm doing this wrong. And I did do it wrong. See? I've done this a bunch of times. I built my own brackets and I still put the wrong one on the wrong side. All right, here we go. Now I'm getting it right. All right, I've got my brackets on here. They're nice and tight. On the passenger side, on both of these, you want the wire facing down or going down. It should not be mounted with the wire up. The wire is down. And then on the inside of the vehicle, you have the single one right there on the outside of the vehicle. So on the right one, the right side is going to be on the top right. Once you have those two brackets on, you're ready to put this back in the truck. So we're going to go over there and do that now. All right, here we are back in there, and I want to show you. This is the original fog light. This is the upgraded. So we're using the same on this side, and this is going to go that way. So this is the inside. That's what this one's going to be. This one here is replacing that one there. And then since this one is so far down over here, they didn't have a way to get a bracket to go down that way. And 2 is more than enough to hold this thing in. Like I said, I've had this in here in my truck with only 2 that I made on my own for the last 4,000 miles in almost 2 months, or a month and a half, and have had 0 issues at all. So at this point, I want to show you, you can actually take the entire wiring harness apart if you wanted to, and then do it all later. There's a screw that goes, it's like a watertight seal. You can take that out. So if you wanted to work on this without all that extra wiring harness hooked up to it, this is what you can work with. Very easy. So I'm going to do that. All right, I've got it started in there. It's not tightened yet. Now I'm going to put the other one on. And a lot of this you're doing by feel because you can't get your head in there while you're looking. But the holes line up perfectly now, which is really nice. So no modification required. The issue I'm having is the head doesn't fit flat on there. I'm not sure if you can see that. Yeah, you can see it doesn't totally fit in there, so it's angling the screw and it'll never get tight. And I had the same issue with the brackets I built, so I went and got these different screws that fit in there perfectly, and they have enough room and they sit flat. So that's what I'm going to use right now, and I will let them know that they need to send this size screw with these new brackets. I'm using my little stubby screwdriver. It's going to be the perfect size for this. And I'm actually going to go from underneath again. Again, you'll see how much easier this is if you do this from taking the whole mounting plate out. Okay, so it's secured in there. Here's the fitment in the front. Looks good. Fits really well. So let's compare. That's the way the new one looks. That's the old one. So the old one has a decent sized gap in there as well. So it's not like it's supposed to be all the way up, but I think that's to let some air in there to cool it. All right, so now I'm going to show you what I consider to be the easy way. Actually, we got to wire it still. Not done yet. All right, so we got to get this plugged back in. There's a little notch in here. You'll see it when you get it. It only fits one way. Goes all the way in. There's an O-ring in there, and then the screw goes on it to hold it all together. So it is 100% watertight. And then you've got all this other wiring stuff you've got to somehow clean up. I got some zip ties, so I'm going to double up some zip ties. There's a hole in the mount here, and then it comes up right below the light. I'll show you when I take the other one off altogether, and this is why I think it's so much easier if you take the whole thing off to do this. But to me, the hardest part about this whole thing is getting these freaking wires all squared away because there's so many of them. Okay, that's the best I'm going to get with the zip ties. Not the cleanest zip tie job. Basically, I have one big zip tie going around the actual mounting plate. I have one zip tie further up here going around the other wiring harness, and then this one zip tie here. It's not going anywhere. It shouldn't rattle around, and if it does, it's out here in the front, so it won't make that big of a deal. But that's how the wiring is. It's the best I can do without taking it out. And now that that's done, we can put this thing back together. I would suggest, well, I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to turn it on and make sure this light works before I put the thing back on. Okay, so I confirmed that it works. Now I can put this back in, and it's just the exact opposite of what you did when you took it off. So you've got to get this felt thing around the back of it. And just get it lined up. And then you can look through You also want to look through these holes here to make sure that you have the actual vent all the way through. There's my finger, there's the vent, so it's in the right spot. And now we just put our bolts back in. 10mm in the bottom. Now I wouldn't tighten it down too much until you actually have these other two in place, and then tighten them all. All right, passenger side is complete. It's centered pretty darn perfectly in there. You can see the size of that LED. It's awesome. That took over an hour on that side, doing it inside the truck. Now we're going to do the driver's side, and I'm going to take the actual bracket out, and you'll see how much easier it is. Okay, driver's side this time. I turned the truck on to turn the tires. So we've got room here. Same thing, 2 T27s and the 10mm. There we go. Okay, so to get this entire bracket out, all right, I think we can see them all. So first bolt, right. All right, we can see them all now. First bolt is right here on the top left of the light. Second bolt, top right of the light. Third bolt right here in front of the crash bar. You got to use a 10mm actual wrench. You can't get a socket on there because it's pretty tight between the crash bar and here. And then the last bolt is to the right of that. You can see it from underneath really easily. It's really obvious to see which bolt it is. Just look at the plastic and you'll notice it. There's also a clip right here that you have to take off. It's one of those zip tie clip things that holds the wiring harness. It's stuck in there. And then there are two over on the inside that are attached as well. So you just gotta, I actually cut the zip ties and I'll put a new one in there. But that's how those come out. So if you have a trim removal tool, you can do that, or you can just yank it out, whatever you want to do, but you got to get that wiring harness out of there. So I'm going to do that right now. While we're in here, also going to undo the wire that goes to it. All right, 4 bolts are out. There are guide holes. Hold this thing in on the bottom. You'll see this thing is going to go in a hole there. This thing goes in a hole in the top, and then the whole thing pops right out. Okay, it took about 10 minutes to get this whole plate out of there. Like I showed you, or like I said, there's 2 tabs or 2 little guide holes on the inside. There are these 2 clips where a zip tie can go through, and it's actually, so it's clipped on and it has a hole in there. I cut the zip ties, and then I'm just going to put a new one through to zip tie the wiring harness back to it. So, and then the other one is a hole right here that you clip the other wiring harness to. So I'm going to put the light in here, get the wiring harness all set, and then put it back in there and show you, in my opinion, how much easier this is than doing the other side the way I did it. So here's the little aluminum bracket I made, and here is their steel bracket they made. Pretty much identical, just a better construction. This is just a filed down piece of aluminum. I'm going to put my Loctite just like I did on the other side. So the aluminum one I made before was on here like this, and then their version just does the same thing, but it's shaped better. So there you have it. I'm not sure if you can see it in the video, but there's little tiny plastic tabbers. This is something I had to shave off on the other side when I made my own thing, or try to make their other brackets fit. So the ones they sent originally are a lot fatter. They're cut different. They don't fit inside of there. So this is the original one they sent me. This one also didn't fit in there, and the holes didn't line up. So they tried. They sent me all these different options, and I had to file them down. But this is, you know, an OEM swap, and it is secure in there. It's not going anywhere. I don't think thread lock is even necessary. I just did it because I had it. It's only like 99 cents or maybe $2. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it pretty much anywhere that sells bolts and screws. So that's in there now. What I'm going to work on now is getting this wiring harness all cleanly zip tied in here before I put it back in the truck, so I don't have to deal with what I dealt with on the other side, trying to get everything, you know, positioned in there, because it was super annoying. So this plug has 5 holes, 5 pins, and there's a little notch on the side, and then when you look in here, you can see a little notch on there. So you got to line the notches up. If you don't line the notches up, it won't even slide in there. And the O-ring squishes between the two to keep it watertight, and then you just tighten this thing down. And the way I zip tied on the other side, I was able to get a zip tie through here and hold all this in there, but it was a super pain to get my finger in there while it was installed in the truck to get the zip tie to come through. So to me, having this out makes it so much easier to work with all the space in the world, unless you're like me and you try to do everything on this one tiny little area. But remember, there are going to be wires coming through here. There is also a wire that has to go here. So I still think this is going to fit and be just fine. I am a zip tie fanatic. I buy them by the bags of 1,000 and I use them all the time with no remorse. I will use 50 of them to secure one thing. I don't care. They're relatively cheap and they're just so darn handy. All right, so there we go. I've got this stuff zip tied basically in the same position that I have on the other side, but way more, you know, it's on there. It's not rattling around. Nothing's moving. And then I've got my plug here to actually plug the wire that was going into the factory. So this is good. I don't even know how long it's taken, but this was so much easier. Now I just got to put it back in there, and you will see, I want to show you right here. So there's a lip on this right here. If you can see it, it kind of goes up right here. The piece of plastic that it goes into, or metal, goes in between those. So if you get this on here and this is on the outside, this is going to be sticking out. You got to make sure you tuck this up under there. You can just push it and bend it, but get your two guide holes in, then the two holes on the right side will be lined up, but then this will be stuck and this will seem too far away. You can't get it, so you got to snap it in there. You might have to give it a little force. It will work. It's not an issue. Just know I had a hard time with that at first. I didn't realize that's how it works. So just know the thing is going to fit inside of there, and I'll try to show you once I get the video of install. So here we go. The hardest part about this is going to be getting it back in there around the wiring harness that's already in there, but I'm confident I can make it happen. And then I'm going to set my two zip ties up right here now for the wiring harness that's already in there, and I cut these with that. Instead of taking these mounts off and possibly stripping out that plastic, I just cut the zip ties. So now I'm just going to put new ones in. Very easy. Let's see if we can get this to fit. All right, so I've got my whole setup here. It's been less than a half hour, and I'm already putting it back together. It took me an hour to do the other side. So this is going to be kind of a pain, but I have confidence. So it's sort of in place. I just got to get these wiring harnesses squared away, and then I'm ready to screw it back in. All right, so I got those two guideposts put in, and like I said, that lip is being a problem, so I'm going to snap it. There's still a big gap right there because the lip right here needs to be on the other side of that metal. So that's what I'm working on trying to get set up. Once the guideposts are in, it makes it a little bit difficult, but once it's set up, they're all going to line up perfectly. It'll be really easy. All right, so I figured it out. Take the bottom one out, put the top one in, get the thing on the other side of the lip, then slide the bottom one in. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. All right, so we're looking from underneath now. There's a guidepost right here that goes in, and the way I was able to get that top part done was to have this one out, get the top part in, get that little lip under it, and then push this in. So now, just tightening screws and turning the wires back, or getting the wiring harness set back up, and we're done. This bottom one's pretty tight on that little crash bar. The good thing about it, on mine anyway, it's easy to finger tighten it first, and then you can get a wrench on there. So I've got everything screwed in. Got that wiring harness where it needs to be. Gonna put my zip ties that I pre-positioned around the wires on the far side. All right, sorry guys, my phone died that I used to record this thing. While I was doing all this, I didn't look at it to see, but I was able to get everything tucked in here It's kind of difficult on the driver's side because you got all the wiring harnesses. There's one more big wiring harness on the driver's side than there is on the passenger side. So basically you just got to get the whole thing up in the area and then start. I went from underneath and got the wiring harnesses around, and then the two guideposts, you get the top one in first on the inside, and then you get that little bump underneath that piece of metal, then you get the bottom one, and then you just start working on getting the screws tightened back in. And then I got everything plugged in right now, so this is the last wire. It's a little bit loose. I could zip tie it, but I don't think I need to. So right now I'm going to make sure it works before I put this cover back on. All right, so it's not powering on, and the last time I did this one, it had the same thing. If I plug it in the other way, it seems to work. I didn't think they were one direction or the other, but apparently they are. They're both working now. Okay, so everything's working. I'm going to throw one more zip tie on there because I have one left out here. All right, so everything is secured in here. All the wires are nice and snug where they should be. So now I just got to put this back in, and we are done with this project. So this part in first, then you got to tuck the felt around this, then you've got to get it lined up on the vent itself. Check from the front. I can see air or light all the way through it. So you can see through, the vent is working. I mean, put my fingers in there. You can see that I blocked it off. Start with the 10 millimeter on the bottom. All right, the job is done. So the passenger side, I did still with the mounting plate in it. Major pain, really hard to get to everything. The hardest part, getting the actual light in there was not the most difficult. Getting the wiring harness cleaned up and squared away was really hard. I found it way better to do it like I did on the driver's side, where you take the mounting plate out and then you can really secure the wiring harness. If you only want to do 3 screws, you can do it like I did on the passenger side. Just zip tie the wiring harness where you can. If you want to do it the way I think is easier and more sanitary, do it by taking the whole plate out. It's just a bunch of 10 millimeter bolts that come out. There's 4 of them, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, and then the whole plate comes out. Hopefully that's helpful. We'll do a quick before and after of the lights, the regular factory lights compared to these, and show you the high beams once it gets dark. That's it. So here is the comparison video. On the other side of the screen, hopefully once I get this edited, you'll see just the factory one, and then this is the new fog light. So this is the regular, that's the high beam. So it lights up a little bit above too. It's not just a straight line across, and that's back to normal. So this is with the headlights. Let's go back here. This is the headlights on. This is the headlights and the fog lights. This is the headlights on the fog lights high beams. You can't really see the high beams too much unless the headlights are off. And there you go, back to it. And then let me show you the high beams here. Let me go back to this. So headlights are on, fog lights are on. High beams turn the fog lights off, and then it goes back. So high beams come on, fog lights go off, and then back. I think the fog lights on are how I'm going to drive. And the fact that they are below the line of the headlights tells you you're not going to be blinding the people out in front of you. It looks high right now because my driveway is kind of slanted up, and it's also slanted a little bit left. The whole truck is angled left. That's why it looks lower on the left than the right. It's just the whole truck is leaning a little bit. But anyway, that's it. I think these are awesome, totally worth it, and I'm super thrilled that Signature Lux wanted to work with me, and I got these things for free. I totally would have paid for them. I might still go back and buy the yellow ones, and I'll just pay for those. Now that they've got the brackets figured out, this is going to be a super easy install for anybody who gets them. Hey guys, so I mentioned all the other cool stuff that Signature Lux sent me. This is their 3D printed Raptor emblem that goes over or instead of these, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. So first of all, it's 3D, and then the side towards the tailgate is actually thicker than the front because the whole thing kind of goes away. So they're not one, like this is for the driver's side, the other one is for the passenger side, because this is thicker on this side. On the other one, this R is going to be thicker. So my question to you all is, should I put it on over the existing decals with the existing graphics package that's on there, or take everything off and put just this back on so it's got it by itself? My preference is to keep this on there because the gray matches the gray pretty well and the black matches the black pretty well, and it covers it 100% as long as I'm careful with it when I put it on there. So I think this is what I want to go with, but I want to get your opinions. So in my next video, I will put this on, and I'm also going to talk about that Apple CarPlay or Google Play device they gave me. It's awesome. I've had it in my truck now for a little over a week, and I love it. Like I said at the beginning, it doesn't have any of the audio issues that my phone going straight to the truck has had. It's a standalone, so it's tied into the Wi-Fi in my truck, so I can do Google Maps. I can watch YouTube or Netflix when I'm sitting there waiting for my kids. I can go to Audible and listen to my Audible books on my own account on that, because it's basically the chip from a tablet that uses your screen as the screen, and then it uses the Wi-Fi in the truck, or if you were to hook it up to your phone for the connection, or you can put a SIM card in it and then you have it tied into a cell net. So it's not dependent on the connection from your phone or Bluetooth device. It does everything on its own once it's tied into some sort of internet, whether it be Wi-Fi, whether it be linked to your phone, whether it have its own SIM card. So that said, I'm gonna also go over that in a longer, more detailed video, because honestly, I had one of these in the past and it was garbage because it did rely on your phone. It did everything over it, and it actually delayed everything by a little bit. So I don't know, I just didn't like that. When I saw it on there, I was like, I'm not gonna get that. When they sent it to me for free, I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna use this thing, and I'm super excited about it. Had I known it is as good as this, I would have bought it when I first bought the truck. But again, Signature Lux is awesome. They sent me these, they sent me that, they sent me the cover pedal. So next video is gonna be all that. But anyway, really great. And let me know what you think about these. Cheers.
It's over!